This podcast may not be for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
In the depths of night, when our consciousness slips away like sand through trembling fingers, we enter a realm where time loses all meaning. The boundary between what was, what is, and what will be dissolves. 5 centuries ago, in a candlelit study in southern France, a man named Michel de Nostradamus understood something modern science still struggles to explain. In his waking, he could see the shadows of things yet to come. In this episode, we'll peel back the veil of some of Nostradamus' prophecies and divine visions. We'll explore his life. In the shadows of medieval France, a child was born. Michel de Nostradamus, one of 9 siblings, drew his first breath in December of 1503. His father was a respectable grain merchant and notary, and both grandfathers were doctors. His early years remained shrouded in mystery, like much of his later prophecies, and under the watchful eye of his grandfather, young Michel absorbed not just the conventional wisdom of Latin, Greek, and mathematics, but also the forbidden knowledge of Jewish mysticism and the ancient art of reading the stars, astrology. These early teachings would plant the seeds of his infamous prophecies. During this time, his grandfather converted to Catholicism and changed the family's name to Nostradamus. The name change is believed to have been done to avoid persecution during the Spanish Inquisition. Fate's dark hand would guide him to the University of Avignon at 14, where he began studying medicine, but the bubonic plague swept through the land, forcing him from the university's halls. He wandered the plague-ravaged countryside like a ghost, learning nature's secrets and the art of healing. In those blood-soaked years, the healer would begin his transformation into the seer who would haunt history's dreams. In 1522, he entered the University of Montpellier and completed his doctorate in medicine. In 1525, he received a license to practice medicine, and then, as medieval academics did, he changed his name from Nostradamus to Nostradamus. Medieval academics often changed their names to its Latin version, as Latin was the primary language during that period. Nostradamus moved among the dying through shadow-draped streets of medieval France and Italy. Other doctors hid behind the bird-like beak masks and drained their patients by bloodletting, an ancient practice of draining someone's blood to remove impurities and treat their condition. Desperate doctors wrapped their victims in pungent robes of garlic as if the mere scent would ward off the darker specter of the plague. Nostradamus chose different methods of treatment for those afflicted by the plague. He did not utilize bloodletting, but explored the idea of proper hygiene. While others clung to ancient superstitions of bloodletting, believing that salvation flowed from open veins, he turned instead to the knowledge of hygiene. Under the cover of night, he recommended removing rotting corpses from the streets, each body a vessel of contagion that others feared to touch. Amid medieval madness, Nostradamus crafted salvation as a small rose pill, a mysterious blend of vitamin C and rose hips that seemed almost magical to those who witnessed its effects. As patients let these herbal lozenges dissolve beneath their tongues, whispers spread through the plague-ridden streets. Some called him a sorcerer, others a savior, but none could deny the power of his unconventional methods. Nostradamus' true sorcery lay in its simplicity. His prescriptions were the bare essentials. Windows needed to open to welcome fresh air into death-filled rooms. Clean water needed to be served. and bedding replaced daily. Acts that appeared radical in an era where filth was acceptable as a constant companion. Perhaps most shocking was his insistence on fresh food and low-fat diets, starkly contrasting the heavy fare that filled most medieval plates. In time, those who once scorned his methods began to seek him out secretly, drawn by the growing number of survivors who witnessed his strange but effective ways. In the darkness of Europe's greatest nightmare, Nostradamus had discovered that sometimes the most potent medicines weren't found in blood-letting bowls or mystical incantations, but in the simple embrace of cleanliness and nature's remedies. Despite his mastery over the Black Death, fate dealt to Nostradamus the cruelest hand imaginable. In Anjin, where he worked alongside renowned Jules César Scaliger, built what seemed to be an impregnable fortress of domestic bliss. A wife, 2 children, and a reputation that drew the sick and dying from miles around. But the plague, that relentless shadow he'd spent years fighting, crept into his own home like a thief in the night. By 1534, the unthinkable happened. The man who had saved countless lives stood helpless as the Black Death claimed his wife and children, mocking his healing arts with each rattling breath they took. The whispers began anew, not of his miraculous cures, but of his failures. How could a healer who couldn't save his own family be trusted with the lives of others? His patience melted away like morning mist, leaving him alone with his grief. Like vultures circling, his in-laws, perhaps bitter with their own loss, descended upon him, demanding the return of their daughter's dowry, as if gold could fill the void left by their shared tragedy. Even Scaliger, his esteemed colleague, turned his back, leaving Nostradamus to walk the paths of the profession alone. But his tongue, not his healing hands, nearly sealed his doom. In 1538, a careless comment about a statue of the Virgin Mary drew the burning gaze of the Inquisition. Nostradamus stood before those who held power to reduce both flesh and reputation to ashes. The healer who had once walked freely among the dying now faced judgment. He would leave and stay away for many years, traveling through Turkey, Italy, and Greece. During this time, he was said to have experienced an awakening that may have awakened his powers of clairvoyance. Nostradamus returned to southern France in 1544, and once again, his unconventional methods proved powerful against death's advance. Those who had once shunned him now spoke his name in reverent whispers. The healer had returned, but he was no longer the same man who had fled in disgrace years before. Settling in the town of Ceylon, he crafted a careful facade of respectability. A new wife, a new family, a thriving medical practice, the perfect mask of a devout Catholic physician. But behind closed doors, in the depths of the night, Nostradamus pursued darker mysteries. In his secret study, meditating over a brass bowl, came his portal to realms beyond mortal understanding. By candlelight, its polished surface gleamed like liquid darkness, reflecting more than mere firelight as he sank into a meditative trance that transported his consciousness beyond the boundaries of time itself and allowed him to foresee future events. In 1550, Nostradamus dared to bridge the gap between his public persona and private mysticism. He wove his midnight visions into an astrological almanac. This success was more than mere validation. It was permission to step further from the shadows, to transmute more of his brass bowl visions into written prophecy. The physician who had once hidden his mystical practices behind closed doors found himself transformed once more. Deep in his study where candlelight danced with shadows and the brass bowl whispered its secrets, Nostradamus embarked on the most ambitious journey yet. He went on to write 10 volumes containing 100 predictions, spanning the next 2,000 years, titled Centuries. 2,000 years of human destiny flowed into these books, each prediction sealed in verses that would perplex and fascinate future generations. Nostradamus filled volume after volume with his insight into dreams and omens. Each book was another piece of the vast tapestry he witnessed in the meditative states. His writing caught the attention of King Henry II in Paris. The king was fascinated by a passage in Volume 1, Quatrain 35, which read, "The young lion will overcome the older one on the field of combat in single battle. He will pierce his eyes through a golden cage. 2 wounds made 1. Then he dies a cruel death." This passage was apparently about the king, and it concerned him. Nostradamus advised him to avoid jousting tournaments. Jousting was a medieval sport in which knights rode horses and charged each other with a lance, attempting to make their opponent fall off their horse. Nostradamus spent many years in this king's court, but retreated back to his town, Ceylon, after the Catholic Church discovered his fortune-telling and threatened to investigate him. On June 28, 1559, King Henry was injured during a jousting tournament. A lance punctured his helmet and blinded him. 10 days later, the blind and injured King Henry died from his injuries. Nostradamus met the end of his life in 1566, passing from conditions he struggled with for years, gout and arthritis, painful diseases that caused swelling in the body. He even predicted his death, though it appears he was 1 year off. The Vatican saw in his prophecies a power that threatened to unravel the fabric of religious control. For 2 centuries, the book languished on the Index Librorum Prohibitum, or what is known as the Index of Forbidden Books, alongside other works deemed too dangerous for mortal minds. Each volume was considered a doorway to forbidden knowledge, a temptation that might lead the faithful astray into a darker realm of understanding. Today, while the Vatican's forbidden list has crumbled to dust, Nostradamus' volumes still pulse within their original power. His quatrains grace modern bookshelves openly, no longer hidden in secret chambers or read by candlelight behind drawn curtains. With each new crisis or global change, readers return to these prophecies, searching for glimpses of our time in these centuries-old verses. Within the predictions in the volumes, there were warnings of the French Revolution and the power-hungry dictator Napoleon, a German Nazi leader that would rise from the depths of hell in the 1930s. Other startling predictions were the development of the atomic bomb, JFK's assassination, the U.S. Space Shuttle Challenger's demise in 1986, and the 9/11 attacks. In 2025, he predicted a decrease in the influence of the established Western countries and an emergence of new world powers. He also stated the great powers will clash. Though his predictions are written in cryptic verses, many interpret them to predict future events. His words continue to haunt humanity's imagination, whispering of futures yet to unfold. In an age of science and reason, Nostradamus' dark poetry still casts its shadow across time, proving that some mysteries refuse to be buried by the passing centuries. Behind me you hear Ryan James Carr's mesmerizing creation, Take Two to Tango. You can find him on Spotify. As we stand at the threshold of 2025, Nostradamus' words echo through the centuries like whispers in a forgotten crypt. His prophecies speak of a time when the sky will burn at 45 degrees, fire approaches the great new city, and some say he saw our modern world through the dark glass of time. But remember, dear listeners, prophecies are like shadows on the wall. They shift and change depending on where you stand. What seems clear in one moment blurs in the next, much like the unexplained realms we've explored together this year. Keep watching the skies, question everything, and never stop seeking answers to the mysteries that surround us. For in these uncertain times, the truth may be stranger than any prophecy. And so, my curious friends, until next time, I'll leave you with this. In the unexplained realms, nothing is ever quite what it seems, except for that shadow in the corner of your eye. That's exactly what you think it is.